Funding for Lawmakers comes from the University of West Georgia, the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, and by supporters of Georgia Public Broadcasting. Thank you.
Coming up on Lawmakers, legislative agendas are unveiled at the annual Eggs and Issues Breakfast. Georgia Power wants to be able to charge customers for power plants before they're constructed. And the only band from Georgia scheduled to appear in the inaugural parade in Washington, D.C. next Tuesday gives a preview performance at the state capitol. Those stories and more are coming up next.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers. Here are your anchors, and Wandy Lawson and David Zelski.
Hello, and Wandy Lawson should be joining me shortly. Let's move on with the program. Also on Lawmakers, a look at an issue not likely to make a return appearance under the Gold Dome in 2009. That's expanding gun rights. But first, our top story. Georgia's leaders unveil some agenda items at the annual Eggs and Issues Breakfast. Well, every year, the Georgia Chamber of Commerce hosts their Eggs and Issues Breakfast at the Georgia World Congress Center. Many legislative priorities for the governor, lieutenant governor, and Speaker of the House are often unveiled during this tasty event.
Thousands of eggs were eaten, but 2009 issues were also on the menu. With a $2 billion budget deficit looming, the theme was getting Georgia back on track, starting with education.
This morning, I want to share 3 ideas that will further our progress, I believe, in education. First of all, you especially know that leaders matter. And I'll ask the General Assembly to establish a high school principal incentive pay program. Under this program, a principal who consistently improves student achievement will receive a $10,000 bonus. I will propose legislation to create a merit pay program that will identify and reward teachers who increase student achievement. Thirdly, we must address our shortage of math and science teachers.
Lieutenant Governor Cagle then took the podium to discuss tough cuts that needed to be made to balance the budget.
The time to write the agenda for Georgia's future is now. Let there be no mistake. My #1 priority for this session is to balance this budget, not by seeking the aid of creative revenue enhancements, but by making the tough decisions to fund essential government services and cut those that are not.
House Speaker Glenn Richardson closed the big breakfast with comments on the usual issues of education, taxes, and transportation. But he also talked about the need for funding a statewide trauma network.
When the people of this state are involved in a traumatic situation like a car accident, they think when they dial 911 that they're going to get the best medical care there is, and they're not getting it right now. We have got to change how we do that.
And we will bring you more priorities for 2009 a bit later in our program. Well, yesterday, protesters gathered on Washington Street near the Capitol to ask the Public Service Commission not to approve Georgia Power's request to build 2 additional nuclear power plants. Lawmakers Minu Hosseini joins us live with the details. Minu.
Protesters are concerned with Georgia Power's request to the Public Service Commission because Georgia Power wants to begin charging customers in advance of the plants being built. But when I spoke with Senator Don Balfour, who supports this legislation, he compared the situation to a loan.
The citizens are going to pay the entire cost one way or another. If they pay the interest up front, then it's going to cost them less later on. If they charge the car to their credit card and they're paying 18% interest on their credit card, by the time they pay off that car, it's going to cost them twice as much. When the ice storm comes, everybody's yelling and screaming, wanting Georgia Power to be there right now to turn the heat on. And you better have the electricity to turn the heat on.
The projected finish date of the project lands between 2016 and 2017. But many protesters of the 2 nuclear plants worry about both the cost as customers and the health risks for people who live near the plants.
My mother died from cancer, my sister and 2 brothers from cancer, and my relatives that have cancer in that area. And like I said, it's been on the rise in the last 20 years. Yes, there has been a study out by a group that the cancer has increased in that area. Yes, it has. Okay. Yes, because we are at the suffering end of it.
But Senator Don Balfour disagreed.
In Augusta, they already have it. And nobody's been complaining for the last 25 years. It's the safest form of energy in the United States, and the cleanest. I've seen no increase in any statistics that show there's an increase in cancer at a nuclear power plant.
The Public Service Commission will not make their decision until March 17th, but until then, they will hold hearings for both sides. Reporting live, I'm Minu Hosseini for Lawmakers.
Okay, thanks for that report, Minu. Well, Senate Democratic leader Robert Brown took the well today for the first time this session. His message that he expects cooperation in the Senate between the Democratic minority and the Republican majority.
We need to stand together on those issues on which we can agree on, try to find that common ground. This is not a time for us to whine. And I know I've said to some members of our caucus who've noted that for the first time since Lieutenant Governor Howard, the minority party does not have the chairmanship of Special Judiciary. The remedy for that is to become the majority. That's the way you do that. You don't whine about it now. When you become the majority, you can determine who the committee chairs are. But until that time, let's work with what we have in the spirit of unity. So I say to the president of this body that if you will allow and keep the Republicans from rooting and tooting, I will do as much as I can to keep the Democrats from starting to cut and shooting. Thank you.
And Senator Cecil Staton also took a moment and a point of personal privilege this morning to reaffirm his position in favor of completing Georgia's statewide trauma network. He says many improvements are still needed for years to come for all parts of Georgia to have adequate access to a level 1 trauma center.
Georgia's trauma death rate it fluctuates from year to year, but it has been as high as 20% above the national average. And the reason for that is we have a very rudimentary trauma system, and only 30% of major traumatic injuries in our state are treated in a designated trauma center. They tell us that if we could only reach the national average, and I'm an old college professor, so average has never really impressed me. But if we could reach the national average, we could save more than 600 lives each year in the state of Georgia.
With all the talk about what legislators will be working on during this 09 session, one issue not likely to be on the agenda is the expansion of gun rights here in Georgia. Lawmakers Valerie Edwards joins us live with this story. Valerie.
David, House Bill 89, or the so-called parking lot gun bill, was one of the most hotly debated issues in the 2008 legislative session. But already, Lieutenant Governor Cagle has sent signals that the issue isn't likely to make the list of must-do items this session.
Last year, we made a significant step. I mean, the NRA themselves stated that we advanced the cause for concealed weapons and gun rights and gun owners 30 years, and it was very important. It was contentious, as we all know. We're not ruling anything out, and I obviously have been a very staunch defender of the Second Amendment and will continue to be, but we've got bigger issues this year.
House Bill 89, as you will recall, allows licensed gun owners with a concealed carry permit to take their weapons into public places, including on MARTA. And over the summer, a Senate Firearms Committee held several public hearings aimed at expanding the list of places where concealed weapons may be taken. The last of those meetings were canceled shortly before the Lieutenant Governor made his comments. One group applauding the Lieutenant Governor's stance is Georgians for Gun Safety. Alice Johnson is the group's executive director.
Well, we think that that's a very wise and reasoned decision, and we're very, very pleased with it. We think that decision is based on a number of things from our standpoint that we think are really important. One is that the Senate study committee this summer really did not accomplish what the goals were in terms of having an objective and realistic conversation with experts and data and information given. And so we didn't think that that conversation is the basis for making good policy.
Now, it should be noted that Johnson says her group has not had an opportunity to review data from law enforcement officials on what impact, if any, HB 89 may be having on a local level. It should also be noted that the issues of gun rights and gun safety are not likely to disappear anytime soon. Late last year, a federal court in Atlanta sent back to a lower court a case about the sale of illegal firearms in which one big city mayor referred to a Smyrna gun store owner as a, quote, rogue gun dealer. Reporting live, I'm Valerie Edwards for Lawmakers.
Okay, thanks for that report, Valerie. Well, tomorrow, Wednesday, January 14th at 10 a.m., Governor Sonny Perdue delivers his 7th State of the State address to a special joint session of the Georgia General Assembly. We invite you to join us on GPB Knowledge for a live broadcast of the governor's address. GPB Knowledge is available to those with digital television receivers at 0.3 of your local GPB transmitter. For example, 20.3 in Augusta or 8.3 in Atlanta. The address will be simulcast on GPB Radio, and you can also watch the address online at gpb.org. That's 10 a.m. tomorrow. Be sure and tune in to Lawmakers at 7 p.m. tomorrow night for a special one-hour program that will include the State of the State address. It's in its entirety. That's a one-hour Lawmakers tomorrow night at 7. Well, we'd also like to recommend a website that is a valuable resource for information about the Georgia General Assembly. Go to www.legis.ga.gov. That website is a great research tool we at Lawmakers use on a regular basis. In other news, Bill Clark of the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association says he was not expecting any kind of tort reform in 2009. This is something the governor mentioned during the Eggs and Issues breakfast. He says he wants to clear up the backlog of cases that lawyers are dealing with and that the courts are dealing with, and he says he wants to put an end to frivolous lawsuits. And this entire plan, Bill Clark says, is not good for the rights of Georgians.
One of the governor's proposals will take away the rights of Georgia citizens to sue the manufacturers of drugs. We believe this is an inappropriate way to deal with the safety of drugs. We have a good tandem of regulation and litigation that together make for a safe marketplace for our drugs. If you remove regulation or if you remove the ability to bring a lawsuit against a negligent drug manufacturer, you take away the ability to protect the public. This bill, as we understand it, will provide blanket immunity to some drug manufacturers. I don't recall when Georgia got in the business of deferring to the federal bureaucracy rather than trusting the citizens of our state who serve on juries to decide who engaged in proper conduct and who did not. If there is a backlog in the courts, and in some courts around the state there is, those backlogs largely are the result of a volume of litigation brought by business. I don't believe that the governor ought to step in the way of our citizens' ability to resolve their differences in the courthouse. That's one of the things that makes our system of government better than the rest of the world. We resolve our disputes through a courthouse and through ordinary citizens serving on juries. We believe the governor's proposal, if it interferes with that, is irresponsible.
Transportation, water rights, and education are all key initiatives for Lieutenant Governor Cagle this year. But he added at this morning's Eggs and Issues breakfast that cutting government spending and balancing the budget needs to be priority number one.
I'm not here to tell you that this year is going to be an easy one. My job today is to paint a picture of reality while still casting a vision of the possible. To join with you in setting the goals for our future and then working together to make those dreams a reality. Because at my core, it is the people from across this state who I care deeply about. And it is their burden I will carry with me in the days ahead. By all accounts, 2009 is going to present just as many challenges as 2008. While most economists predict that we will find bottom in this new year, just like in business, we have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I still believe that Georgia is the greatest state in the nation. Even in these challenging times, people continue to move here. They come because of the strong economic foundation Georgia has built over the years through key investments that have created a healthy business climate. The busiest airport in the world, Hartsfield-Jackson. The fastest growing ports in the United States, the Georgia ports. And our outstanding research universities such as Georgia, Georgia Tech, Emory, and the Medical College of Georgia. Strategic investments of the past built the Georgia of today, a state that is a national economic powerhouse, the capital of the South.
We hope to bring you some more additional coverage on eggs and issues, particularly around the governor's education initiatives and property tax changes as well. Technical difficulties prevent that this evening. In other news, one lobbyist group is saying most state agencies are ignoring immigration laws and rewarding illegal immigrants in the state of Georgia. Lawmakers' Brittany Evans has that story.
People all over Georgia should know that while we're cutting our budget, we're still providing benefits and services to people with no legal right to be here.
King is referring to the Georgia Security and Immigration Act, which passed in 2006. Under the law, public employees must prove their legal working status and their right to public benefits. King is asking legislators to withhold funding or fine agencies who aren't enforcing the law. He says he's gotten a very positive response from lawmakers, including the author of the bill, Senate Majority Leader Chip Rogers.
House of Representatives has made it one of their top priorities to make sure that there is some repercussions if you are not in compliance with the law.
We have a finite budget. We have to find 10% in Georgia. We should not be spending money to educate, provide health care, and incarceration to people who have no legal right to be here.
King emphasized how illegal immigration is closely tied with the current economic woes, but other civil rights groups disagree.
We would take issue that they pay no taxes whatsoever and that they are a contributing portion of society in general and the economy in the state of Georgia.
Shore also says many undocumented immigrants have tax IDs and pay real estate taxes, sales taxes, and taxes on rental properties. No matter whether there's a causal relationship or not, it seems that immigration will join economic issues on legislators' plates this session. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Brittany Evans.
Former U.S. Attorney General Griffin Bell, of course, passed away recently. His longtime friend, Senator George Hooks of Americas, presented a resolution yesterday honoring Judge Griffin Bell.
He got his start in this building as the chief of staff for then Governor, the late Ernest Vandiver. Governor Vandiver had been elected, like all Southern governors, under the promise of No. 1, of maintaining rigid segregation. Each and every agency and department head were lined up at the governor's mansion out in the Prado, and they were polled, and all of them agreed to close the University of Georgia. Judge Bell, as the chief of staff for the governor, advised the governor against it. Governor Vandiver stood against the tide, kept the university open.
And one high school band from Georgia is on the march towards Washington, D.C. for the 2009 presidential inauguration. Their first stop, the state capitol. Evan Seitz has that story.
Music filled the halls of the state capitol today as the South Cobb High School band sounded off for the representatives of Georgia.
We're proud of these young people and that they raised the money, over $100,000, in a little community that right now doesn't have it. And it was because of the way they went about it and the energy they went about it.
And I think it's so fitting that we're playing Summon the Heroes in front of our president, because we're looking at 96 students that are heroes. We're looking at a school that is a hero. We're looking at a community of Atlanta, Summon the Heroes.
Now the band prepares for their greatest endeavor yet, taking their music from the capital of Georgia to the capital of our nation.
And as Nwandi mentioned early in our program, we had intended to bring you more coverage of the speakers at the annual Eggs and Issues breakfast. Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, we were unable to do that this evening. We hope to bring you these stories in a future Lawmakers broadcast. Now we bring you a reprise of an in-depth interview with Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle. As Lieutenant Governor, one of Casey Cagle's roles is to preside over the Senate, and he begins every year with a list of new initiatives he hopes to pass during the session. I recently had a chance to sit down with the Lieutenant Governor and began our discussion by asking him about his priorities for 2009.
No doubt that the recession and the economy that we find ourselves in will monopolize the entire session. We are seeing, record unemployment, record foreclosure, a lot of pain out there, and the downsizing that's occurring within corporate America all over this country is really having an impact. And certainly Georgia's not exempt from it. We're looking at about a $2 billion shortfall in revenue. And quite honestly, I don't want to raise taxes, and I think we need to really cut the budget and look at those things that truly are essential and those that are non-essential. Government can't be all things to all people, and it's my philosophical view that government should only do for the citizenry what the citizenry cannot do for themselves. And so when it comes to education, along with taking care of the blind, the disabled, the elderly, along with public safety, those are core functions, core services that government needs to do. But we've got to look long and hard in those other areas to really weed out the real non-essential things.
And taxes was a big issue last year. Tax reform, there were ideas in the House, ideas in the Senate. Not too much went through. Are we planning to see as many tax reforms idea with the current economy situation? Yeah, well, there's no doubt. We're glad that a lot of those bills didn't end up seeing the day. Because that $2 billion shortfall could have ended up being something that would be very difficult. So I really do think there's broad consensus. Of course, the Senate did pass a cap on assessment for property tax. That, of course, is very popular and is a proven record. We passed it, and now the House has agreed with that position. So I think that we will see that, giving some stability to the property owner across Georgia and predictability, which I think is maybe just as important. So we're very optimistic in that area. Another big issue, a bill that didn't get through in the final minutes of last session, was the T-SPLOST bill. Are we going to see that again, and also any other transportation initiatives that may pop up this year? A lot of transportation issues that will be moving through the process. As we all know, the second worst congestion problem in the country exists here in Metro Atlanta. It needs to be resolved. We need 4,000 new road miles, cost of $50 billion to do that. The old model is not going to take care of our future needs. And so we've got to be innovative. And the T-SPLOST concept, I think, makes a lot of sense. It's a proven track record where you have the general SPLOST along with the educational SPLOST, and now you would give local communities that third option, which would be the T-SPLOST. And consumers, voters, constituents would be able to look at that and determine which is a greater priority, if it's one or all three. So it's a proven track record. And then, really redefining the Department of Transportation has got to occur as well. And we've got to look outside the box and look at the other tools like concessions and tolls and things of this nature, where you're engaging the private sector to come in and build many of these roads and utilizing the asset more efficiently. Movable lanes, movable medians that allow more capacity in peak times versus off-peak times. All of that needs to be put into a statewide transportation plan to really give us clear focus to move forward. And another issue that it was one of your initiatives back in '07 when you first got going, one of your first ones to pass was the Charter Schools Initiative. Talk about the latest in your plans for education and charter schools. What's next? Well, I'm extremely excited about the reform measures we've made in education. It really is my passion. I mean, as Lieutenant Governor, there are a lot of things that can catch my eye, but there are a few things that catch my heart. And the ability to really make an impact in the lives of kids is what I really want to be about. And we have done something really unique in education. The charter school system concept, which frees up the school from all the bureaucracy, allows teachers to get back involved in teaching to meet the need of that individual student. And what we're seeing in terms of success is out of this world. And I believe that we're not only going to set the barometer by which we will be measured in Georgia, but I think through the nation. We're going to really do something special in education through charter school systems. And then career academies, where we're teaching kids on a technical path of learning to where they're getting in school, and we're seeing 98% dropout, 98% graduation rate, 100% placement rate once they're finished. If you want to affect the dropout rate in Georgia, this is the way you do it. I mean, right now we are 48%
28th in the country in our dropout rate. It's a shame that we've not really addressed it to this degree. But what the Career Academy concept does is it really gives kids a relevance in what they're learning, and we're going to continue to move down that path.
Well, the House and Senate didn't agree on everything last year, but it heads, especially a lot towards the end of the session. What are your predictions for 2009 when it comes to, lack of a better term, getting along with the House and pushing things through together?
Well, you know, the truth is that we get along fine. I like him an awful lot. We philosophically disagree, and I think there's a right way to go about disagreeing, and certainly I don't do it in public. And but it's the nature of the business, and we are going to continue to you know, operate with the same principles that we always have, being a, you know, strong fiscal conservative and believing in setting a course for our state that'll be very positive in the end. The Speaker, you know, and I will, you know, continue our communication and try to work things out and make it as smooth as possible. The good thing is that there's not going to be any money to fight over, so that's going to have a way of trying to, you know, get us focused on the issues of importance.
Come late March or April, hopefully not late April, to look back at 2009 and deem it a success, what would you like to see?
Well, the good thing is the expectations are not very high, and the truth is if we get through this budget and not raising taxes, balance it, obviously strategically prioritize our spending, it will be a huge success. And if we can put in there some real solutions with education, transportation, along with trauma, those are things that I think are on people's mind. But I like to say, do no harm. Oftentimes, you're not judged by the new laws you put on the books, but how you protect people's freedom and their liberty and really take care of their business affairs.
Okay. Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Dave. Real honor. Thank you.
Again, we would like to apologize for the technical difficulties in today's program. We hope to bring you some of the stories that were absent from this program in a future Lawmakers broadcast.
And just another reminder that Governor Sonny Perdue delivers his 7th State of the State address to a special joint session of the Georgia General Assembly. We invite you to join us on GPB Knowledge for a live broadcast of the governor's address. GPB Knowledge is available to those with digital television receivers at 0.3 of your local GPB transmitter. For example, 20.3 in Augusta or 8.3 in Atlanta. The address will be simulcast on GPB Radio, and you can also watch the address online at gpb.org. That's 10 a.m. tomorrow. Be sure to tune in to Lawmakers at 7 p.m. tomorrow night for a special 1-hour program that will include the State of the State address in its entirety. That's a 1-hour Lawmakers tomorrow night at 7. And if you've missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. on GPB or 7 a.m. on GPB Knowledge. You can also keep up with all the action under the Gold Dome daily on your local GPB radio station during Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and Georgia Gazette. Coming up next on GPB Television, Georgia Outdoors, Licensed to Fish. That's next here on GPB.
And that is our broadcast for this, the second legislative day of the 2009 session of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm David Zelski.
And I'm Wandy Lawson. Please join us tomorrow at 7 for Lawmakers. Good night. Good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.